Saturday in Starkville. 271st meeting all time between Mississippi State and Ole Miss. If you watched the broadcast, I assume, if you listened to either the Mississippi State or the Ole Miss broadcast, you no doubt heard that it was the first time, 271st meeting, first time ever, I guess this is stat of the day number 2, that both Mississippi State and Ole Miss had been ranked in the AP Top 25 when they met. That feels like a statistical anomaly as well.
Yeah.
When that series goes back as far as it has gone, and you know that even though there hasn't necessarily been sustained success year after year after year, you know that there have been pockets of success for both teams along the way, for them never to have both been ranked when they met. Well, that's what happened in Starkville. Could very well happen when they meet in Oxford here in a few weeks also. But out of the 271 meetings between these two teams, you would be hard-pressed to find more than a handful of games that delivered any more than Saturday night delivered in Humphrey Coliseum. Bulldogs get the win 84-81 in overtime. They outscored Ole Miss 10-7 in the extra 5 minutes. Mississippi State jumped out to a 14-2 lead. It was 18-4. 14 was the biggest margin that Mississippi State had in the ball game. And then Ole Miss kind of clawed their way back. Ole Miss did not take its first lead until overtime, right?
Correct. First bucket of overtime.
The first basket of overtime was the first time Ole Miss led in the entire game. It was tied at 0-0, and then it was tied at 74-74 thanks to a dagger 3 from Matthew Morrell with 8 seconds left on the clock, and then an errant 3-ball by Riley Kugel, who had a monster game that would have given Mississippi State the win in regulation. Hey, Dad, you were there. It was packed to the brim. It looked great on television. It sounded great, and it really felt like a heavyweight fight. And for these two teams to have been ranked, both, for the first time ever, it felt like a game that you watch when, you know, you've had a pair of Big 12 teams where it's a top 10 matchup on Big Monday, or one of those classic Florida-Kentucky games, or a classic Kentucky-Arkansas game. It felt like one of those on Saturday.
It felt like a top 25 college basketball game. You could have changed the uniforms out for any teams you wanted. Intensity, great plays on both sides, some heroic performances, and in the end, the home team gets the win, which, you know, going back to Friday with Borky, now we both said they'll probably split. They'll probably split the series. The home team will win those games. You know, and early on, State looked really, really good, and I give Ole Miss a lot of credit because I thought Ole Miss played a way they don't normally like to play. You know, that's not the most – they're a very good defensive team, but we would not come on here and say that they're a physical team. But I thought they played very physical. They had to because Murphy and Matthews and Nwoku gave State some advantage down low. Ole Miss did a great job defending those guys. The difference in the game is twofold. It's you mentioned it, State's ability to kind of shut down Malik Dia, and then the sequence. I don't know what to call it. I'm trying to come up with a catchy name for it, like the prayer at Jordan Hare. So I don't know what to call it.
The block and the shock?
I don't know. I want to work the hump in there somewhere, but I don't know where to put it. But it goes steal, outlet pass, block, outlet pass, lob. People have talked so much about the block, and the block's an incredible play. And if you're a coach who likes to preach, don't give up on a play, buddy, have I got a highlight clip for you. But to me, that play is made when Cam Matthews is in midair. I guess he realizes he can't dunk it, and he sees Kugel, and Kugel, with the presence of mind to stay locked in and receive that pass and then shoot the three. I mean, a lot of players at that time, you know, when they see Cam go up, they're going to put their arms up. They're celebrating with the crowd. They think he's going to dunk it. Kugel and Matthews both on the same page there, and that's a 5-point swing in a game that State won by 3. That's where the game was pretty much won or lost.
what did it sound like in the hump when that shot went in?
Well, let's give some credit to Mississippi State basketball. They've put out some fantastic videos, including a wide shot of the arena that captures the whole sequence with no commentary whatsoever. And it was really, really loud. I mean, as loud as the hump can be nowadays, it was about that loud. It was really loud for the block. It gets loud when they lob and you think Cam's going to dunk, and then the three ball, really, really loud. Really, really loud.
It's almost like one of those football moments where you get a sack or you hit the quarterback and the ball comes out and the cheer goes up.
He just keeps rising.
And then it gets scooped and the cheer gets louder, and then the guy breaks away and it gets louder, and then you realize, oh, he's got a chance to score, and it just kind of crescendos. It was that kind of moment in Starkville on Saturday of which team won and which team lost and why. The numbers should tell the story from why Mississippi State won on Saturday, and frankly, guys, the numbers do not point to a 3-point overtime victory for Mississippi State. Let's start with scoring. Riley Kugel with a season-high 21 points on 6 of 11 shooting. He played 30 minutes, hit 4 of 8 from 3, and he was a perfect 5 of 5 from the free throw line. He also had 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, and did not turn it over in the game. I don't know what his plus-minus was, but I'm assuming it was really, really good in this one. And this was coming off Riley Kugel, getting injured early in the Kentucky game and then not playing at all in the game against Auburn, right?
Yeah. And, I mean, you really want to go back. He had his worst game of the season against Vanderbilt. So it had been 3 games since he had played really well.
18 points for Keyshawn Murphy off the bench on 8 of 12 shooting. He played 32 minutes off the bench, and bottom line, he was an absolute physical beast down low for Mississippi State. That was not 8 of 12 where he was hitting 15, 17, 18-foot jumpers.
No.
It was all at or around the rim. So 2 guys off the bench combining for 39. And then you had 3 starters in double figures. R.J. Melendez, 12. Cam Matthews, 10. Josh Hubbard, 10. So, again, numbers that don't necessarily make sense. Yeah, Matthews, double-double, 10 points, 11 rebounds. But if I told you going in that Josh Hubbard was going to be 2 of 13 from the field, you probably would have not thought that was a great recipe for a successful outcome for Mississippi State. The rebounding margin in this game. It's the first time in SEC play that rebounding has raised its ugly head and bitten Ole Miss. They were out-rebounded 51-29, but more importantly, 19-8 on the offensive glass.
Yeah.
So many extra opportunities for Mississippi State in this game because of offensive rebounding.
19 offensive rebounds, 19 second-chance points for Mississippi State. Only 6 second-chance points for Ole Miss. So, that's a big portion of it. And you mentioned rebounding. Only played 11 minutes, but Michael Nwoko had 8 rebounds in those 11 minutes. You can see the ceiling for this guy, and it's really, really high. He's just got to put it all together. But Murphy was fantastic in this game. That's probably a big reason why Nwoko didn't come back in. Because why? Murphy's playing great.
And that was your ball game. So I'm using the word dirty, not implying that the play was dirty. I mean, Mississippi State did the dirty things well. They fought for rebound, second, all that stuff. That was where they beat Ole Miss. They beat Ole Miss on the physical, I know this is kind of cheesy, but like the want-to stuff. When you have 19
early, it wasn't like that for the whole game, but early it was certainly like that.
They punched Ole Miss in the mouth, and Ole Miss did not respond to it well. And I mean, when Malik Dia was basically unplayable. I know if you look at his stat line, you think, oh, why didn't he play more? That's weird. No, he couldn't. And you could see Chris Beard's frustration with him, and you could see he was getting frustrated because the second he would touch the basketball, he'd get doubled, and it just did not match Mississippi State's physicality. They played him off the floor. He was unplayable in the second half, and Ole Miss had to go small. The small ball lineup was working, but they went small because State was able to just frustrate Dia into, I mean, he had 4 turnovers, took a couple of bad shots. Chris Beard, essentially after the game, was like, I need my big to not take fadeaway jumpers and to, get physical on the block, and he was not physical today. And that was the key to the game. I texted Haydad during it. State did such a good job of frustrating Ole Miss's best offensive weapon in SEC play to the point where he was unplayable in the second half of that game.
Yeah, and he's coming off a game where he had 23 points and 18 rebounds against another team that is very, very athletic and has got some bigs in Alabama on Wednesday night or Tuesday night, I guess it was.
Just didn't match that energy from State at all on Saturday.
He did hit 2 big threes in the second half. Those came at a huge time, but your point about him not being a factor in the game is a good one. Jamin Brakefield played well for Ole Miss, 20 points in 34 minutes. Matthew Morrell scored 15, but all of them came in the second half.
I don't think Brakefield's points were quiet, but it was just one of those things where I looked up in the second half. I was like, oh, wait, he's having a huge game. And kind of really picked up the slack for Dia.
Especially since he had to play the 5 because they were doing the small ball lineup. And
pretty significant free throw disparity. Mississippi State makes 3 more free throws than Ole Miss attempts.
And State was bad on the line, 17 to 28.
Yeah, they were at 61%, but Ole Miss was worse. They were at 57%, 8 of 14 from the line. And if all you did was look at the free throw numbers, you'd be like, whew, State got a friendly whistle at home. And there were some times in the game where they got a friendly whistle. But that's not the reason that Mississippi State shot 28 free throws and Ole Miss shot 14. It's because they were the more aggressive basketball team.
It was the same thing last year. Remember, Beard was really loud about it last year. This year he said he didn't have any complaints, but State is a team that goes into the paint and tries to get points. Ole Miss is a team that shoots a lot of jump shots. When you shoot a lot of jump shots, you're not going to take a lot of free throws. I mean, it's just simple as that. State wants to get into the paint a little bit more with Matthews, with Murphy. Kugel can get into the paint. Melendez can get into the paint. And so they're going to shoot free throws. Yeah, I definitely, I thought the officiating was not great. I've never seen that many reviews in a college basketball game. But at the same time, I didn't think it was overly slanted one way or the other. State's just the more physical team there.
Yeah. State turned it over 15 times. Ole Miss turned it over 10. That's just a hair above their season average, but the turnover numbers were not egregious for either team. Ole Miss shot it a little bit better from 3, 37% to 33% in the ball game. But it was, I was thinking about this, and I thought, you got a team where there's some newness to the rivalry, and maybe they just didn't know exactly what to expect right out of the gate. But then I thought that doesn't make sense. Jamin Brakefield's played in a bunch of these games. Matthew Morrell's played in a bunch of these games. Juju Murray's now played in, 3 of these games. This was his 3rd. You got guys who are experienced. So I don't think it was this rivalry game they weren't ready. I think it was a scenario where Mississippi State came out of the gate as the more desperate team because of the situation they were in. They had lost consecutive games in the SEC. It was a home game. Yes, it was a rivalry game, but more importantly, it was one of 18 and one of 9 that they get at home. And they've already lost a home game in SEC play. For Ole Miss, it was a team coming off a huge win on the road. They were undefeated in conference play. They already had a couple of road wins. And there may just not have been quite that same sense of urgency right out of the gate for Ole Miss that Mississippi State had. And that's why you looked up at the scoreboard. It's 18-4. And we have seen teams in this series or other games fall behind early and they get beat by 30. And they just kind of play it out for the last 30 minutes. To Ole Miss's credit, they didn't do that at all. And that's been one of the things that you've seen with a veteran Ole Miss basketball team is they don't seem to do a whole lot of scoreboard watching early. They may fall behind 8, 10, 14 in this case. But they really fought their way back into it. They got it within single digits at halftime. They were down 8 at the break. And then outscored Mississippi State by 8 in the second half.
They've got to figure out how to start faster, though. And that's not taking away from Mississippi State punching them in the mouth, right? Both of those things are true, right? State came out hot, played well, executed their plan, knocked Dia out of the game basically with physicality. All that's true. But that's 5 consecutive conference games where Ole Miss could not score out of the gate.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing that's going to prevent them from being a truly great team. I think you can call them almost great at this point. They're Nets 13. They're ranked in the top 20. Like that's pretty great. But the one thing that's going to cap this team is how they start games, and it bit them. I mean, could you imagine how exhausting it was in that environment with how hostile it was against that team who's kind of beating up on you physically to come back in that game?
Yeah.
And so it's got to start Wednesday. You can't just repeatedly defend yourself out of double-digit holes in first halves. They got away with it in Tuscaloosa because they defended like mad. They got away with it against a bad team in LSU, giving up a 15-0 scoring run in the first half. I don't think you're getting away with that even on Wednesday. So they've got to fix whatever that is quickly, or else they're going to lose games they probably shouldn't.